There's one thing that I keep hearing from, over at Data Foundations, I do some consulting, and what I keep hearing is that people are struggling to just come up with a structure for the data team. So in this particular case, you led the data team. How did you go about creating that?
Yeah, so I mean, our data team is currently 5 people with, I think, 7 or 8 roles in market. So it's not as large as some teams that you'll see out there, but it's also larger than a lot of the teams. Anyone talks about the large teams. When I'm interviewing people, quite often they're coming from 2 or 3 person data teams, which are a subset of engineering, whereas we're standalone. We work very closely with engineering. But anyway, the structure, very clearly engineering, right? Like engineering was where we started. We have to get the fundamentals right, and that begins with engineering. We worked with a technical infrastructure DevOps team that's not part of data, but we have added those capabilities into our team fairly recently. So in order to have
speed up the provisioning, have the infrastructure,
have the focus, we still collaborate very closely with the company DevOps team, but we have a lot more self-organization in this respect, which is relatively easy for us because we have our own systems, because we're the data team. We know we're not sharing system like the feature squads are doing across the rest of the platform.
Oh, right.
Well, so I mean, we're running BigQuery databases and such, which would be inappropriate for a transactional system. Which
absolutely. Obviously. The engineer goes like, should I now take a lunch break and wait for this query to come?
Right. That's right. So data engineering. We obviously we're at, I mean, I've been acting as a data scientist. We've hired a couple more data scientists who started in 2 weeks to sort of have full-time focus on that. They're going to sit separately to the engineers, and then the analysts will sit separately as well, even though we're one team, but with different sort of leads and such, and then collaborate temporarily on specific initiatives that they're working on.
And the relationship between the data team and the business, like you reporting directly to them? Yeah.
That's hard. So what's clear is that we own the data environment, right? So no one has any concerns with that. There's been a lot of support from everyone for the creation of a data warehouse, and people are very happy because it gets very messy and very unglamorous very quickly, and that's great. We're good with all that. Data science, and by that I mean the creation of machine learning oriented or based models for operational purposes in particular. That's with us. No one else is really concerned with that. But there have been noises made about, it'd be very useful to have a data scientist in this team or in this other team. I don't have any real concerns with that. They're quite localized initiatives, right? That they would be involved on. So just having a single for their entire time with Pet Circle that's compartmentalized. That sounds fine to me. The concern would be is if they had deployment of models that didn't go through the professional standards that really only a data team and to an extent an engineering team can have, like peer review, code and versioning, other things as well.
Testing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So a lot of departments just simply don't have that in their DNA. And then analysis, I think, is where there's a lot of contention. A lot of debate that I see. And that's the sort of 3 different models. Is it centralized? Is it completely decentralized? Or do you go the hub and spoke? And so we're going the hub and spoke. And that's from a team perspective. Tell
me more, how does that actually work?
Yeah. So what that means is that obviously we provide a data warehouse. Anyone in the business can make use of the data warehouse through the BI tool. And that includes data analysts hired within other departments.
So finance would have their own analysts.
Finance are always going to have their own analysts because they have a very specialized need in the commercial side. And broadly, that's not an issue, right? Commercial people tend to be of a similar sort of mindset to data people and engineering people. So,
but they do have they access data that's already been cleaned and prepared for that.
Exactly. So only data engineers and the data team will have access or do have access to the data lake, to the raw data. So analysts outside the team have 2 limitations. One is they can really only access the data warehouse, which is clean, documented, data dictionary. From my perspective, most importantly, cohesive and singular, right? So there's not different definitions of what a new customer is, or what a lapsed customer is, or what a sales figure is. It's only in there once, right? The other kind of limitation is their sharing rights. So of the BI tool. So commercial can do it, because commercial do a lot of standardized reporting on sales and these sorts of things. But most teams, their analysts build reports and they can only share them within their function. And that's to avoid the situation, which has happened repeatedly in our history at PetCircle, where one team genuinely needs a metric, let's say lapse rate, and they do some work on it. And, of course it's functional for them, but then it gets disseminated across the whole business, and it's not necessarily useful in fact, it can be distinct from some of the other ways that people view that across the business. So cohesion in the data, fragmentation of the data, is something that I'm relentless on pushing it back against, right? Like, once we have fragmented data across the business, fragmented information, fragmented metrics, fragmented interpretation of what's going on, it kills our ability to operationalize it. And that's where I think I said at the start, I'd rather have data less than data driven when it's three different definitions of whether this customer is lapsed or is not lapsed or is something else. That's the prism through which I view the team organization. Now, we as sort of engineers and as people who value data more than anyone else also need to guard against that sort of Golem-esque, it's my precious approach. So we want to encourage analysts in all departments to do the best job they can. So we're looking at ways we can enable them to upload their own data sets, their own unique data sets into the system, to keep that separate from the rest of it. It's not clean, official company data, but it is there so that they can match company data against their own private data sets and really find you in.
If you don't do it, they'll do it anyways.
That's a good point. Yeah, but I mean, you want to have trust. Like, people are doing good things. We don't want to centralize and bog down. We are passionate about democratizing data. It's probably I went too far at the start and made it too available. Like, everyone in the company had SQL access to the entire database, and that caused a lot of problems. So we've got to pull it back, but I don't want to overcorrect.
Yeah. So your approach to governance is like, there are specialized functions within the topology of the data function. And they can be distributed. They can be in different teams. They do access clean, standardized, high quality data for their needs, but they can also pitch in with their own data sets, as long as we know what is gold data and what is bronze data.
Yeah, and that bronze data shouldn't be shared. Shouldn't be made a top level company metric or company chart or company report. The other thing I've seen on a practical basis from within a business is it can be quite challenging for non-data teams to actually hire and retain and engage high quality data people. People always argue about, I should have more analysts, I should have this. The fact is, it's very hard to hire good quality data or any data people at the moment, right? So it can be a bit of an academic exercise. A lot of our departments at PetCircle have actually said, you know what, I need some analysts, but data, how about you go and hire them? You have like that sort of formal reporting line, but they're like permanently seconded to that department. I seeded this approach, but I think it's right from what I've seen. Like, individuals in the profession of data want to have the professional development, the standards, the collaboration with peers. That they really, and they want a manager and a head of function who actually understands data and is looking to progress it and making use of new technologies and capabilities. Exactly. That career development, as well as someone who's going to promote what they've created, and they want so they're actually more attracted to working within a specialized data team.